Good afternoon, everybody. It's Pete Carmasino here with Chaikin Analytics for this week's halftime show. Thanks for joining me again. Last week we had off. It was a long weekend, Labor Day weekend, and we're picking right up where we left off here with the market sort of overlay, kind of seeing what's happening here today. We've got a bit of a rebound, but sort of short-lived. And so we'll talk about some different groups here, and also looking at one specific sector, which is the food sector today. I'm seeing several names that are in the bearish category. Our food product industry in general is in a bearish trend. And there are a few staple names that that are looking like they're starting to change trend to the downside. And so given the fact that we're in this September sort of seasonality, we want to take a look at some of the downside as well. And I'm going to look into, I have something here that's pretty special. It's a crystal bull, not a crystal ball, a crystal bull. And so the crystal bull knows all. We're going to look in and we're going to look at the ACP platform. We're going to look at the Chaikin power gauge as well on the ACP platform, where you can, sort of use that and access that for a really small annual fee. And then I'll be flipping between the ACP charts and the Chaikin charts just so you can see. And we're going to dive into the power gauge as well and look at some different factors. But what's happening here today? I mean, look, we've got a big opening day. It feels nice. I mean, the Dow's up, about 0.6%. S&P is about flat, maybe up slightly, just a few points, having some trouble here. We'll look at the S&P levels too. VIX is elevated a little bit. And we had a little bit of pressure last week, right? We had a sell-off last week, and that's kind of what's happening here. It's kind of showing a little movement in the upside in the beginning of the day, but just followed by some selling. And look, that's part of what's happening here. We've been hitting new highs, from week to week and month to month. But really what's happening here today, you've got the big outperformer today is energy as the standout. We'll look at XLE, and looking at some of the defensives and financials are also beating the tape. And XLU has actually been in performance mode for a little bit of time here, for a short period, a few weeks. It's been doing pretty well. And so that's kind of a risk-off sentiment. But let's dive into the Chaikin charts and see what we can see here. And we'll look on the ACP platform and look at some food product names that are starting to change to the downside. Okay, we are back here taking a look at the XLU I had up first. And like I said, it's been moving since July. It had a bit of a breakout here, seeing the moving averages cross to the upside. The MACD was pretty early on this at around $63, and that took it all the way up to 70. So, 7 on 63 is a decent number. I mean, it's about 11% or so, and that's been an interesting move. And it's kind of double topped here and went sideways a little bit. But what's happening in that kind of a mode is it's a risk off sort of proxy, almost a bond proxy. And we're kind of seeing the S&P slow just a tad, right? So let's look at the S&P real quick. We're seeing that kind of that rollover phase here. RSI is holding. I use the 21 RSI, and I keep the MACD on here because it's one of the defaults on here. Just seeing some consolidation, but some lower highs, right? And so when you get those lower highs, it's kind of I don't want to call it a massive negative, but you just don't like to see it. But I'm also seeing decrease in volume. I've got sort of a 20-day moving average here. You just see it just slowly fading down. So less activity, little divergence on the S&P. Again, seasonality at play, tons of stuff to worry about as well. Obviously, all kinds of things happening with the stimulus and interest rates and taper, and you name it, Delta. It's all there. Recipe for a slowdown, right? So you got to be kind of aware of that. But, let's look at the VIX very quickly. Starting to see a turn up. MACD, getting a little activity here. And RSI is elevated, but, this typically migrates between, a 40 and sort of a 60 level. And so it got right up to that number and kind of popped lower as it hit resistance. But it can get overbought, right? I mean, it happened here in May. It happened back here in January. And obviously last year It happened several times. And so when you start to see these moves, this kind of curl up, and coupled with utilities and the S&P kind of rolling over and utilities starting to catch a tailwind, it just kind of escalates on itself. So the names that I want to look at, though, in this food group is one of them. The main names is Hershey. Okay. And so when I pull up the Chaikin power gauge here, I've got a bearish gauge, and it's pretty amazing. And you wouldn't think that on the financials and technicals and on the experts, you'd see Hershey doing what it's doing, but it's about to have a cross. There's a 50 and a 20. And you know what? I'm going to change this to a 200 right in front of your eyes. Right. And it's far away from that on a daily, right? It's a pretty well spread out, but what we're seeing is the MACD kind of breaking down and all of that. But let's look at the chart of Hershey. And I pulled up the entire food group here. That's what's cool, about a lot of charting systems. You can get into the industry, but ours is one click of a button, boom, and you're there. And what I'm seeing here is a negative relative strength change on Hershey. So I would call that as, sort of the bear of the day. When I look into the crystal ball, I'm seeing bears, and that's, sometimes that happens. But in specific industries, we look at the food products. It's maybe hard to see, but we've got about 65 names in this industry, the way that we categorize it. And, from our data provider, only 5 bulls and 40 bears, right? And so it's telling you that there's some trend. Now the stock's moving higher today, but you look at the trend in the industry, both are weak. And let's dive into the gauge a little bit. What do we have? Industry relative strength negative. So the industry is in general, but you've got estimate trends are in good shape, but analyst ratings are in the middle. Insiders kind of neutral as well, but almost no short interest. Now, I hope it didn't create any ideas of a short interest here, but you just are seeing some slowdown, negative money flow, and a negative personality change. When we see that, we call it out. And so that's kind of what's happening here. We'll go to another well-known name, Kraft Heinz. See, it's already started its decline, but it doesn't look like it's getting any better. And so again, that's a 50, 20-day cross here. I don't know why it did that to me, but I probably needed to save that chart. But I'm just going to add a 200 there as well. And, when you see that, it's getting close to doing what we call the death cross. And if I go into Chaikin and look at Kraft Heinz right here, just right below Hershey there, a few names. What am I seeing? I already see the relative strength change happen back here. Let's go take a look. On June 23rd, almost the beginning of July, in that time frame, we started to see that right here. Okay, so the negative relative strength change is interesting, but look where experts are, financials as well, are all in the bearish category. So that's pushing the gauge to bearish. And when we look at what experts are thinking about Kraft Heinz, again, short interest is in the neutral position. Estimate trends are down, and analyst ratings are neutral. Right. But we got insiders buying, so that's always good. But at the same time, this is right around support of around $36. It is getting into an overbought category and starting again to get weaker and weaker, kind of into the trend of the food industry. So again, just a call out to be careful there. Let's look at another well-known name, Campbell Soup, which has already really started its downtrend. And if again, we see the 50 and the 20-day crossed back here in June, and if I create a 200-day there, let's see where that happened. And that happened right somewhere just a month later. Okay. And what do we have here on the power gauge? Again, experts in the negative. Everything else is neutral or lower. So that's creating a bearish category. And don't forget Campbell Soup. They put food in steel and aluminum cans, and their prices are going up. That's already been sort of announced in a lot of industries. When I say prices, it's not only just the can and the container, but it's also the food itself. That's kind of what we're seeing here. And so this has been in a negative trend for quite some time. But what's interesting about it is we get an overbought sell right now. And again, because it's overbought with a negative relative strength, this is trying to push up against resistance here. It's up a little bit today, but starting to roll over. Looking at experts, I got high short interest here. Analyst rating trend and industry relative strength, all negative. So in this case, the shorts are either right or have been right and might continue to be right. So you got to take a look at that. So some smaller names. This is TreeHouse Group that already broke down. But again, we're very bearish on the name. And if you kind of look at a longer term chart, it looks like it kind of found support here in this range of $36, $37. Oops. And you know, what you've got there is just a chart that, you know, is kind of finding almost a double or triple bottom here. But if I go look at THS, it's really down on the ranks because it's actually a very bearish. So it's at the bottom of the list. And you start to look to see how this has been playing out. This is where the relative strength started to change here sometime in May, around $48, and just continued lower. Again, talking about food prices, inflation, and all areas of their business is not helping. But you do have insiders buying, so there is some positivity there. So it's a fight almost against insiders versus shorts, but analysts aren't helping at all. So again, when you see these names, you've got to, you know, kind of just be aware. And here's another one, the Simply Good Food Company. This one's early, right? So this one's early in the trend. There's your 50-20 cross. If I add, I annotate this to a 200 or update this to a 200, right? Not too far away. So this could happen, but let's look at the Chaikin chart. But you see, we're already very bearish right here. But if I go to the Chaikin chart, and it's just above TreeHouse here on the bottom of the list, I'm early on that relative strength change. Okay. And I've got earnings coming out the 22nd of October. And let's look at what experts have to say. Short interest is neutral. Analyst rating trend is neutral. Relative strength in the industry is just not great. Insiders are actually selling, but estimate trends have moved up. So you got a pretty mixed bag, but it's equaling a bearish rating in the expert section. Go to the financial area. Obviously, we're already there on a very bearish category in financials. So I just wanted to point out those names because when you start to see an entire group make a move, you know, you want to pay attention to that. Last one's Hain Celestial Group, which has also been in a negative trend. There's your 50-20 already crossed. And if I create a 200-day here real quick, in the same boat. Okay, in the same boat here. So let's take a look really quick. There's Hain, H-A-I-N is a symbol. And what do we have? We've had this in a negative trend for quite some time. So sometimes around the middle of April this year, it started to break down. But let's look at experts. Again, mixed bag with estimate trends higher and rating trend lower. So maybe the estimates might come down. It could be a catalyst for further downsides. You got to be careful. Again, in this group, does not look great. Looking pretty weak at the moment. So that's what we have for the charts. Okay, everybody, that was today's halftime show. Again, food products looking negative. Market struggling here, hitting some areas of resistance and support. And so utilities rallying, starting to see defensive rally on some of these names. And so you want to just be careful. Again, if you're in the food group area, the names I called out are kind of changing trend. We're already bearish on the rating. So just be cognizant of that. Use the ACP system for your technicals. Use the power gauge for your fundamentals. And I think marrying the two together has been working for us for quite some time. So thanks again for joining us and have a great week.
Hey, Grayson Rose here with StockCharts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, consider giving it a like down below, maybe leave us a comment, and if you're new to the channel, you can subscribe at the link up above. We're gonna bring you daily content from an incredible collection of technical analysts and financial experts.